year students, welcome to the 16th lecture on the subject English literature. The theme of the lecture is The Bright Representatives of Critical Realism, Charles Dickens, W.M.Thackeray, Thackeray, the Bronte sisters. Objectives. After the lecture, students will be able to list key events in the lives of Charles Dickens, W.M.Thackeray, Thackeray, Bronte sisters. Outline the works and literary influence of Charles Dickens, W.M.Thackeray, Thackeray, and Bronte sisters. Identify the role of women writers in the progress of English realism. During the lecture, we will discuss the following questions. The basic problems raised by English realists of the 19th century in their works. Charles Dickens, his life and work, his best novels. W.M.Thackeray, Thackeray, his life and work, Snobism according to Thackeray, and his masterpiece Vanity Fair. Role of women writers in the progress of English realism, Sisters Bronte and their novels about women in the society, domination of money and hypocrisy. Realism is a movement in art which started in the mid-19th century in France and later spread to the entire world. Realism entered literature almost at the same time. Its real objective was to root out what is called fantastic and romantic in literature and art, to insert what is real. In literature, writers use realism as a literary technique to describe story elements such as setting, characters, themes, etc., without using elaborate imaginary or figurative language, such as similes and metaphors. Through realism, writers explain things without decorative language or sugarcoating the events. Realism is something opposite to romanticism or idealism. Realism attempts to illustrate life without romantic subjectivity and idealization. It focuses on the actualities of life and truthfully treats the commonplace characters of everyday life. The purpose of using realism is to emphasize the reality and morality that is usually realistic and for people as well as for society. This sort of realism makes the readers face reality as it happens in the world, rather than in the make-believe world of fantasy. The greatest novelists of the age were Charles Dickens, W.M.Thackeray, Thackeray, Charlotte Bronte, Elizabeth Gaskell, and George Eliot. These writers used the novel as a tool to protest against the evils in contemporary social and economic life and to picture the world in a realistic way. They expressed deep sympathy for the working people, described the unbearable conditions of their life and work. Criticism in their works was very strong, so some scholars called them critical realists, and the trend to which they belong, critical realism. Charles John Haffon Dickens, a novelist and one of the most popular writers in the history of English and world literature, is generally considered the greatest realist of England and the world's greatest author of the Victorian era. In his enormous body of works, Dickens combined mystery storytelling, humor, pathos, and irony with sharp social criticism and accurate observation of people and places, both real and imagined. Dickens was born on the 7th of February 1812 in Portsmouth and spent most of his childhood in London and Kent, both of which appear frequently in his novels. Charles Dickens is the greatest representative of English critical realism, a classic of world literature. His name stands first in the list of authors belonging to the brilliant school. Himself a member of bourgeois family unexpectedly ruined, he knew firsthand the sufferings, hardships of the group. He started school at the age of 9. His father was a clerk in the Navy Pay Office. When the boy was 10 years old, the family settled in a mean quarter in London. Things went from bad to worse, until Dickens' father was imprisoned for debt. The little boy, weak and sensitive, was now sent to work in a blacking factory for 6 shillings a week. His poverty, however, brought him into contact with the homes of very poor, and he saw with his own eyes all the horrors and cruelty in a large capitalist city. He later described this period of his childhood. When his father's affairs took a turn for the better, Dickens was sent to school where the boys trained white mice much better than the master trained the boys. In fact, his education consisted in extensive reading of books. After his school days, he entered the employment of an attorney, and his spare time studied shorthand writing. Charles Dickens and Catherine Hogarth married in 1836 when he was 24 and she was 21. From then until the time of their divorce 20 years later, Catherine got pregnant at least a dozen times, had at least 2 miscarriages, and gave birth to 10 children. 9 survived infancy, 8 reached adulthood, and all of them disappointed their father, who lamented having brought up the largest family ever known with the smallest disposition to do anything for themselves. At the end of the 19th century, Dickens became a parliamentary reporter. This work led naturally to journalism, and journalism to novel writing. Dickens' life as a literary artist falls into 4 periods. The first period, from 1833-1841, with some good novels like Oliver Twist's Travels, The Old Curiosity Shop. This is the period of humor and optimism. Dickens shows men and women who remain true to the principles of honor regardless of external circumstances, in difficulty or in danger. The second period, from 1642-1648, with the novels American Notes, The Christmas Books. This is the period of sarcasm and criticism. In this period, Dickens touches upon problems such as power of money for evil, relations between money and happiness, profit-making, and morality. Humor and optimism vanished, giving place to sharp laugh. The third period, from 1649-1660, included the most famous novels, David Copperfield, Hard Times, and The Tale of Two Cities. This is the period of strongest social criticism on the soulless. The pen was at work making war against social abuses like corruption in the law courts and cruelty and starvation of boarding schools. The fourth period, from 1861-1865, included Great Expectation and Our Mutual Friend. This is the period of romanticism from the disillusion. Dickens had lost all faith in the ruling class of Britain as a force to bring the society to equality and happiness. His first novels, The Portsmouth Paper of the Pickwick Club, appeared in 1836. His novel Oliver Twist, published in 1837-1839, deals with social problems and is one of the best works of Dickens. The novel tells the story of a little boy born in a workhouse and left an orphan. Brought up under cruel conditions, the hero runs away from the workhouse to London. The boy, kind and honest by nature, falls into the hands of a gang of thieves and lives through dreadful hardship. With Oliver Twist still in hand, Dickens began to work on his next novel, Nicholas Nickleby, which described the awful conditions under which the children of the poor were brought up and exposed the cruelty of the bourgeoisie. Nicholas Nickleby appeared in 1838-1839. The book deals with another burning question of the day, that is, of the education of children in English private schools. In 1841, Dickens visited the USA to lecture on his work. Dickens spent in the USA several months visiting different parts of the country. It is with great indignation that he describes the condition under which the Negroes live in America. The prison system of the USA, the yellow press, and a number of other aspects of American life were described by him in a critical manner. The writer's impression of the USA was summed up in his American Notes. As Dickens matured artistically, his novels developed from comic tales based on the adventures of a central character like the Pickwick Papers or Nicholas Nickleby to works of great social relevance, psychological insights, and narrative and symbolic complexity. Among his fine works are Bleak House, Little Dorrit, Great Expectations, Our Mutual Friend. Readers of the 19th and early 20th century usually praise Dickens' early novels for their humor and pathos. While recognizing the virtues of these books, critics today tend to rank more highly the later works because of their formal coherence and accurate perception of the human condition. In addition to those mentioned, Dickens' major writings include Oliver Twist, The Old Curiosity Shop, Martin Chuzzlewit, Dombey and Son, Hard Times, A Tale of Two Cities, The Mystery of Edwin Drood. He traveled in America and Europe and was a mature actor. He left his wife in 1858, defying scandal, maintained a secret friendship with Ellen Ternan, an actress. He died worn out by public reading tours. W.M.Thackeray was born in the family of a prominent official in Calcutta. In 1817, the boy was sent to England, where he went to school. In 1828, entered the Cambridge University. While at the university, Thackeray displayed a talent for drawing and edited a student paper. The stagnant atmosphere of the place irked Thackeray so that finally he left the university. In 1830, he went traveling over Germany, Italy, and France, going in for self-education and art studies. On his return to England in 1833, he took up journalism. Thackeray wrote many novels. His gentle and kindly satire is exquisitely humorous, and his simplest, direct pathos is of extraordinary power. In his works, we can see the picture of the upper classes must be truer and more real. His most famous novels, The Book of Snobs and Vanity Fair. In 1846 and 1847, Thackeray published The Book of Snobs. The book admirably draws a gallery of English snobs from different walks of life. The Thackeray's view, a snob is a person who phones up his social superiors and looks down with contempt upon his inferiors. In his book, the author declares war against snobism, vanity, and selfishness. The Book of Snobs may be considered as a kind of prelude to the author's major work, Vanity Fair. In the 40s, Thackeray's creative method as that of a realistic writer becomes firmly established. A brilliant example of this method and one of the greatest masterpieces of English literature under Critical Realism is his Vanity Fair, a novel without a hero, published in 1847-1848. Along with snobbery, the book treats of a more significant theme, portrayal of the world which is under the influence of the money and hypercritical morals. With Vanity Fair, the first work published under his own name, Thackeray adopted the system of publishing a novel serially in monthly parts that had been so successfully used by Dickens. The title of the book was an allusion to the city of London, which had been described in the famous 17th century religious allegory of John Bunyan, The Pilgrim's Progress. The picture of London is presented as a big fair where everything is bought and sold, including people. Subtitled A Novel Without a Hero, the novel is deliberately anti-heroic. The rich movement and color of this panorama of early 19th century society make Vanity Fair Thackeray's greatest achievement. The narrative skill, subtle characterization, and descriptive power make it one of the outstanding novels of this period. But Vanity Fair is more than a portrayal and imaginative analysis of a particular society. A parallel has often been drawn between Dickens and Thackeray, sometimes to the advantage of the one, sometimes of the other. They are indeed very different in outlook and artistic method, in education and background. Bronte is the name of three English novelists, also sisters, whose works have become beloved classics. The sisters Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, and Anne Bronte were born in Thornton. Their father, Patrick Bronte, who had been born in Ireland, was appointed director of Haworth, a village on the Yorkshire moors. In 1824, when their mother died, Charlotte and Emily were sent to join their older sister Mary and Elizabeth at the Clergy Daughters' School in Cowan Bridge. This was the original on which was modeled in infamous Lowood School of Charlotte Bronte's novel Jane Eyre. Mary and Elizabeth returned to Haworth ill and died in 1825. Charlotte and Emily were later taken away from the school due to the grim conditions and the sister's illness. Charlotte went away to school again in Roe Head in 1831, returning home a year later to continue her education and teach her sisters. She returned to Roe Head in 1835 as a teacher, taking Emily with her. In 1842, conceiving the idea of opening a small private school of their own and to improve their French, Charlotte and Emily went to Brussels to a private boarding school. The death of their aunt, who had kept house for the family, compelled their return, however. Emily stayed at the Haworth as housekeeper and became governess in a family near York. Charlotte went back to Brussels. Her experiences were forming the basis of the rendering Each sister then published a novel. Charlotte's Jane Eyre was published first in 1847. Anne's Agnes Grey and Emily's Wuthering Heights appeared a little later that year. Emily caught cold and died December 19, 1848. Anne died too on May 28, 1849. Her second novel, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, had been published the year before. The account of drunkard's degeneration, it was a deeply rooted in personal observation of Agnes Grey, the study of a governor's life. Jane Eyre's popularity had been faded. It is passionate impression of female issues and concerns. It presented a thinking, feeling woman craving for love but able to renounce it at the call of impassioned self-respect and moral beliefs. The novel is subtitled An Autobiography and is written in the first person, but except in Jane Eyre's impressions of Lowood, the autobiography is not Charlotte's. Personal experience is combined with suggestions from widely different sources, and the Cinderella theme may well come from Samuel Richardson's Pamela. Prominent English writers and their experienced, elegant masterpieces opened a great deal of political and social truth. Dickens, Thackeray, Gaskell, and the Bronte sisters pictured in their works the true world, harsh, full of conceit, minor tyranny, and ignorance. They did a great deal to explain their times and to explore the myths of Victorian prosperity. In conclusion, we can say the centenary in 1970 of Dickens' death demonstrated a critical consensus about his standing second only to William Shakespeare in English literature, which would have seemed incredible 40 or even 20 years earlier. At the turn of the 21st century, Dickens remained a compelling figure for biographers, scholars, television and film producers, and everyday readers. Thackeray's writing style was formed in opposition to Dickens' accusation of social evils and against the artificial style and sentimentality of life and moral values of the popular historical romances. Although critical of society, Thackeray remained basically conservative. He was one of the first English writers of the time to portray the commonplace with great realism. This approach was carried on in the English novel by Anthony Trollope. The Bronte sisters kept the secret of their authorship between the three of them. By adopting pseudonyms, they were able to bring the same passion and confidence to their published novels as they did to their childhood writings. However, after the deaths of Emily and Anne, Charlotte allowed her publishers and friends to learn her true identity and was fitted as a celebrity. In particular, received her wish to be forever known. This is the end of the lecture. At the end of the lecture, you are given revision questions to answer. Also, the list of terms are given of the lecture. There are references for further study.